Sounds good.
Well, there you go, Greg. You're going to be forever memorialized in Habitat Ideoland.
Well, thanks for joining us, first of all. Thanks for taking time away from your auditors to do this. Kevin and I have been learning a lot, even though Kevin's been here forever, and I feel like I've been here forever. We're still learning a lot from people who, helped start the affiliate, really. So.
Well, Greg, I will respect the fact that you have things that are on your plate that need to be taken care of today. And thank you so much for taking the time. And we'd just like to explore a little bit of chat with you. And what I'd like to just throw a really simple question out for you to respond to, and that is, how did you and why did you get started in Habitat?
Well, I was trying to remember. It's been so long, but I got involved with the Crosby group with Amy and Jim Butler, and I think that's how I got involved initially. And I think part of that was the fact that we started at Rutgers hosting the meetings for the group. And
right, you were at Rutgers at that time. So Jim and Amy were the ones that started the Crosby group?
So Jim Butler and his wife, and I lost her name, he was a pastor at the Presbyterian Church, and Amy Barber, his sister, were really involved in Habitat at that time. And I want to say probably Kathy Akins was an early add-on to that group as well. And we actually, I think we got involved because we were doing some houses. We had a opportunity, I think it was Anderson Brothers moving a house, the one that we put underneath the water tower in Crosby. And then also Mr. Everson's mother's farm that Lori got. Lori, yeah. And I think that was, we had our own projects at that time, and I think that's how I got involved initially.
So what about Habitat inspired you as you started getting involved? Because you stuck around with Habitat for quite a while, including joining the board of directors.
Yes, it's a wonderful program, and I just believed in it so much because the work that, even though when I was working at Rutgers, I was helping get Salem West started, and just believed so much in the need for decent housing in our area. I mean, it's just so lacking, and that dynamic hasn't changed. That as more people came up and found it as a vacation spot, all the property values went up, and it just made it impossible for people to have a home.
Well, that's very true, and it's still accelerating at paces that we wouldn't have dreamed even a year ago. But so you mentioned that you thought affordable housing was a really important need, but can you share with me any of the perspectives you had on the impact this had for the family?
Well, I think because initially when we were working more locally with Crosby, we knew the families, and we saw that what happened when they got a home, that the homeowners had opportunities for education, that the kids had a stable life, and we just saw lives advancing and progressing on their own power. And I mean, who couldn't get excited about that? And at the same time, but I've made a lot of trips to Honduras, probably in excess of 50, and got involved down there, and seeing Habitat being international and seeing the impact that it can have worldwide obviously just fueled that passion. And I'm trying to, it was John Feller, right? Correct? And then also, no, I lost his name, the pastor at the Congregational Church.
Oh, yes. Paul LeDuc. We were just down to visit with him.
Right. And so I, got involved in the board from that, and ultimately at one point was chairing the board because of the different, with Sister Vivian, Arts getting involved, and I forget her sister's name. Her actual sister was involved. Yeah, at one point, and Tom, I had his name, the Tom, the
Tom
CEO
Prusek.
of yep, Prusek, yep. We, from other ways of knowing him, kind of got pulled into working on the board, which was awesome. And I think eventually, the Crosby affiliate realized it made more sense to, to join forces, because that was when we really started having motivation and real positive movement, was when the hospital bought up all the houses and started doing the parking lots. And all of a sudden we were moving a lot of houses. And I just remember when people said it's easier to build than to move. And as somebody who's never built a house, I didn't think that made sense. But as soon as we started building houses, it made a lot of sense. But we moved a lot of houses there for a few years.
Well, and that kind of leads to an interesting perspective of being on the board, that there was kind of a pivot point that some growth started taking place. What were some of the challenges or opportunities that you saw as a board member with that?
So one of the things for sure was, as it was growing, trying to manage that with a part-time staff and a board wasn't going to work. The time had come to take that leap and to get full-time direction and get additional staff, because you just couldn't possibly expect the volunteer board to do that work. And I think also because of how spread out geographically, the way we could get property, Greasy Point was always a big place for us to get property, and we were so spread out in the work that we were doing. It just, we had to have a central office. We had to have staff and some stability if it was going to grow.
So you were involved very early on, and I'm curious to get your reaction to the fact that last Thursday evening we dedicated the 122nd completion.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a lot of lives, huh?
It is. I always said, maybe if there's any one good thing I did when I was on the board, it was being a part of the team that hired you.
Well, thank you, Greg, for that compliment. But no, wonderful, wonderful things that the board has done over time. It's changed. You were a part of the board at the point when a whole bunch of policies were being adopted and crafted, and it changed the whole vision of future, I think.
Right, and that was at a time when, when social enterprise for nonprofits was really becoming, a big thing, and getting the Restore going and getting all that started. And, I remember how excited we were to get that building done and have a little bit of the Restore in the back, and then the tornado took it away. And I remember our youth group over there picking up pieces. I was saying the other day, we have our oldest daughter, who was quite young then, has a piece of the rafter sitting on the mantle in one of our cabins that she picked up from that day.
I've never heard that part of the story, Greg.
Yeah. In fact, there was like a greenhouse next door right by, because I remember our kids going over there, the youth group, and helping her put back all the seed packet. Was trying to help make some sense of that. It was such a mess. And kind of like the fire at Salem West, sometimes those disasters become a huge lesson. Got us moving forward.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned social enterprise and Restore. And yes, that is a very big method of funding operations for nonprofits. But in my recollection of the Restore progression is that it wasn't necessarily universally welcomed among the board as a concept.
When an organization takes that next step, there's always a lot of pushback and a lot of challenges to face the change that's coming on, and a lot of times that involves reaching out to some new strength and staff and board members to grasp that vision.
And I'll never forget, though, that the conversations were lively. And they were bringing to the table very different perspectives. And I thought it was awesome that there was this respectful conversation from different sides of the table, if you will. But ultimately, the thing that I had so much respect for and continue to is that once the decision was made we're getting into this business and moving forward, no matter what perspective that anybody was coming from, the board got behind it 100%.
Right. I mean, the buy-in was, once the decision was made, was awesome.
Truly, truly.
And I
So,
think it helped too that Habitat had a model in place, for that too, that you weren't just reinventing the wheel, which, makes it, always makes things a little bit easier. You have to put your own personal spin to it. I think at the same time, it was good when, Crosby and the different areas kind of pulled together, and became one organization, because it was hard to be, to be having those multiple meetings. And I remember the house that we took on over at Lake Lena, also realizing as much as you want to do everything, starting to take on projects that are 80 miles away are probably, some challenges that are, you learn to kind of stay within your reason and your region and just follow your mission as well.
yeah, and staying true to what you started to do is really important as well, I think. You mentioned the global work, and I think that's a really important thing to call out too. And there is a principle that I remember very clearly at a board meeting early on when we finished a grant program with Habitat International. The last checkbox was to tithe on the grant. And the conversation was, again, a lively conversation about, well, what do we do about that? And at a pause, Sister Vivian quietly interjected, well, tithe means 10%, so that's what we should do. And
Yes.
I think there was universal acceptance at that point, but I think more importantly was that there was a vision that we needed to get to the place where we were a full tither to the program. Greg, I'm happy to share with you that we received a Malachi 310 award, where it talks about giving first fruits. It marked our $500,000 total lifetime contribution to the tithe program to Habitat International. Guatemala and Haiti are being our two countries. And it will only take us a few short years to reach the next $500,000 in contribution. So can you speak to what that meant to have that conversation and helping move tithe as a mission principle for us?
I think because of the group and the makeup, it truly came from the heart of all the different churches, that tithing was just something that we believed in. So it was an easy step to take, because I think for most people, it was a principle that they lived with in their life. And I share all the time, and in my work up here too, my greatest mentor always said that money follows mission, mission doesn't follow money. And I think, stepping out in faith and doing the right thing, is always the right thing to do. I think we've never seen that principle fail us. In the midst of the toughest times and challenges, in the downturn in 2009 and the different times, you always survive them. You always get through that.
But it still takes hard work.
Being faith-based is imperative. I mean, if it wasn't faith-based, I probably wouldn't have been as deeply involved in it. So I think that's true for most people.
I think that's a really good point, Greg. And I think there are a lot of people who do not understand that we are a Christian ministry, and that the principles that Habitat was founded on are still the principles we carry forward today. And what would you say to a church that hasn't been involved to learn for the first time that we are indeed a Christian ministry?
Well, for one thing, they're missing out on a lot. And I know from my home congregation at Salem Lutheran, we had people who loved to frame, and they loved to be there the first day, and they loved to put the walls up. And you find a group of people who have the gifts and the talent and the heart. It's an amazing thing. It's one of those things that transforms congregations when they get involved deeply in a mission and something that people believe in, that you can really put your heart in. It strengthens worship, it strengthens fellowship, it strengthens every part of any kind of faith-based organization, to pull together and work for a common cause.
Well said. And in a business perspective, I'm hearing you say the return on investment is greater than what you invest.
Right. In for us, right now we're actually doing a Habitat house in Honduras because we can't travel there right now. So I made connections with the affiliate down there, and we're working with them. And that's awesome because our church can still be involved in Honduras, even though we can't physically be there. You have this reliable, great organization that you know you can trust and move forward with. So it's been a wonderful thing for us this year. In fact, the fundraising for that was really easy because people still want to be involved there, and we just can't physically be there right now. So, and I'd have to say for me personally, and probably for Salem, you know, to suffer the tragic loss of Salem West, and then to be able to take that property with some of the special plantings that survived the fire and put a habitat house on there was like one of the most healing things that our congregation could do, because you took something bad and took the biblical promises that God uses everything for good, and to be able to turn that around and put a home on it was not only incredible experience, but it was such a very healing experience to take a loss and turn it into such a wonderful blessing.
Well, I think that's great witness to the church's outreach and ministry and connections of opportunities, and we're very thankful for that. And it's just one of the countless, as I like to say, God stories that have driven us and continue to motivate us. Greg, is there anything that you would like to just share and in general about something you may have learned through your time with Habitat? And
I've probably spent the last number of years with Family Selection Committee, and I think learning the humility to see people where they're at, especially when it's maybe not an experience we personally had in our lives. You learn so much about people's struggles, but also their tenacity and their strength, and how so many people are kind of swept under the rug as people who just want to receive services, when indeed they're just looking for that one break, you know, and what a home means, you know, what that means to their family, to reunification, to stability, and giving people that one step, what it does for their lives, you know. And I think we have seen in all those houses, you know, success after success after success. And there's always going to be those things in our work that maybe don't quite turn out the way we want, but overall, you know, you just see people take an opportunity, and when you've given them that one little leg up, they can run, you know. And all the families that have stable housing, and it just, you know, it's just a miracle, you know. It is just a miracle.
wow, I couldn't ask for somebody to say kinder and more thoughtful words than what you just did. And your work with the Family Selection Committee is so appreciated, and is probably among the hardest thing in the work that we do. And frankly, I think that there's a lot to be said about the courage of the families that raise their hand and say, how about me? As you pointed out, it takes a pretty good swallowing of humility and humble pie, if you will, to raise your hand and say, I need help.
And then to be approved and then wait 1 or 2 years, you know, while they're patiently waiting for, you know, what seems like an eternity to get going. But I always said that there's two of the very best parts of Habitat is blessing the site and blessing the home. You know, those two bookends are just so incredibly powerful.
And making the call to the family saying you've been selected, but yes, then the patience that it takes. We've never claimed to be an overnight solution, but we are a long-term solution.
Yeah.
So cool.
When it's interesting being, you know, taking this job was scary for us to leave things that we loved and the community we love, but it's the same up here, and I've used that same language forever in Salem West, is when you live in an area like the Brainerd Lakes area, you know, and people see all the grand houses on the water, you're missing the people that are living back in the woods. And I always said those are the people that we love and care for, because they're the ones who kind of get lost in the midst you know, especially people that come up on weekends and have busy lives, when they would retire and we would invite them to come to a habitat build, and they would actually really start to understand the community that they're retired in, that it isn't just that weekend crowd on the lake, but it's people who make their living cutting wood and doing lawn work and shoveling snow and having seasonal jobs in resorts, and the struggles that they have. You know, it's eye-opening, and all these ministries give us that opportunity to open more people's eyes to helping their neighbors. You know, and it's like you say, you can just get lost in these big touristy areas where everything's busy, and you don't take the time to really see your neighbor.
Well said, Greg. And I always have said it's the stuff we drive by but we don't see, and you don't know what's behind those walls. And it's not necessarily just out in the backwoods. It's the stuff we drive by every day that might be the next family that we need to pull out of there and give the opportunity for a decent home.
And I think too, when we transitioned, I remember our son-in-law and myself doing the tar in one of the homes in Brainerd, we could start to build homes for special situations. It was so awesome. Instead of just building those same homes, make something handicap accessible, or do some special things that fit a family who had some unique needs. And I think when you could start to customize those homes and make them fit what a person needs, I mean, that's just like, you know, the frosting on the cake, you know, when you can start to get to that level. I mean, that's just really, really amazing.
You just made me remember, or it brought to my mind, that there are a lot of people, a lot of partners who play a role in habitat. And, you know, one of those being Norson in creating our house designs and such. And I'm very, very proud to say, Greg, that with the assistance of Norson's team last year, we built a fully handicap adapted home. And we submitted that to a house design contest with Habitat International, and it was selected as the most accessible plan of all. So
awesome.
It is. It's there's some new treasure to be found every day and every year and every family.
Do you have, since you've been around for a long time, you know, you were with us way back when, is there one family that sticks out in your mind that you've seen, you know, benefits, or how their family has changed in the last 25 years that you've been involved?
Yeah. I've lost her name right now, but we dedicated her home, and she's a nurse in Crosby. It was one of the houses in Ironton by the old school.
Cindy.
I mean, there went somebody who just took every opportunity, you know, got a wonderful education, and, you know, has just, yeah, she truly stands out, because our kids knew her daughter as well, and just what that home meant to their future. I mean, talk about somebody who really just did an amazing thing with their life. I mean, that probably would be number one. Also think of a few neighborhoods that we put houses in where the neighborhood started to well, I don't know what word to kind of jump in the suit, and houses started to get cleaned up and look nicer because of it, you know. And I think that was a big thing with a few of the houses in Ironton, you know, that we did, where all of a sudden you have this really nice house, and then the neighborhood just started to improve a bit. So,
you know, I think sometimes neglected neighborhoods just need somebody to invest in them for them to want to invest back into their own properties. So, yeah. Well, I think this is just remarkable, Greg. Thank you so much for what you've helped create here. And I'm really, really hopeful that we're good stewards of what you helped bring to this place, and that it will continue to carry forward and pound more nails and serve more families and watch more kids grow up.
Well, it takes an army, and truly when
Oh no.
We don't have a time limit because we have 2 people, but I think maybe his internet froze or something.
It sure looks like it because it's still recording. Well, Greg, I don't know if you can hear me, but
What happened?
you froze.
Really?
You froze there, Greg. I don't know if you could please just rephrase what you just were saying.
Oh, I would say my warmest memories are really back in the early days in Crosby, and I just wish that the Butlers and Amy Barber and some of those folks could be here to see what they did. But what they did was get that fire started and that passion, and you saw in them this drive to not stop and not be defeated. And it's, you know, that's where this all came. It's easy for us to come in and carry the torch, but it's those people that didn't give up in the beginning that really made the difference of where it's at today.
Great, Greg. Well, thank you again. My best to your mission in Alaska. Thank you for continuing to keep us in your prayers, and we look forward to when you stop by and we can catch up again.
Awesome. Well, great to see you guys, and wonderful work. I tell you, when you moved into that big building, I thought, you know, you made it now. So just remember helping at the restore in the old mall and just the challenges of everything in and out of there. It's like, if you're going to keep doing something, you got to change this. It was too hard.
Yes, there was the hand of God keeping us from having any major incident and injury when one door in and one door out, and oh my, yep, I closed my eyes more than once.
Yeah, the same with some of those salvages we did, you know, just good that OSHA wasn't around.
Yeah.
Now that falls back into that easier to ask forgiveness and permission thing, right?
It does. It does.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Great.
I guess you guys, your day's coming to an end. So.
Recording, huh?
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Bye-bye.
So yeah, if you hit the pause or the stop.